Okay, says we're live. Judge Lora Cubbage, how you doing today?
I am doing fine, Dennis. How are you? Papa
Um,
Dennis.
nice of you to be here with us and talk with us. You are, of course, the candidate for the for Seat 5, North Carolina Court of Appeals, and we'll get into that that particular candidacy and everything. But first, I want to um, get to know you.
Okay.
Who is before you were Judge Cubbage? Who was and who is Laura Cubbage?
Well, Laura Cubbage is a girl that came from the Shenandoah Valley and of Virginia, Shenandoah, Virginia, born in a family with four of the sisters. I am an identical twin. I came to Greensboro, North Carolina back in 1994. I went to barber school and I cut hair behind a chair from 1996 up until 2011. So even when I was a district attorney, I would leave the district attorney's office for the day and I would go to the shop and continue to cut hair because my customers were so loyal when I was in law school and in college that I decided that I wanted to stay as loyal to them as I could until I couldn't anymore. And so I am a homebody. I have one daughter who's 29, and I have a granddaughter that's 3. And I spend most of my spare time either reading or writing, and spending time now with the granddaughter. I am in the community volunteering mostly all the time that I'm not in court. I am doing speaking engagements. I am at the schools. I sponsor most of not most of them, the schools in my district. I sponsor their athletic programs every year. So I am at those schools doing something, helping out with the seniors as far as their caps and gowns and those types of things. I'm mentoring young ladies. We call them going from pebbles to pearls. And that's who I am.
So, when did you decide that you wanted to get into law and get into public service? When did that first start appealing to you?
Around probably about, it started appealing to me probably around 96, 97. I was in the barbershop and I kept hearing stories from the guys whose hair I was cutting about how they had an interaction with the justice system. They didn't feel like it was fair, or either how they gotten so entwined in the system that, things just seem to be spiraling down. And I was like, okay, there's got to be a way I can help, because you should be able to go to court for a traffic charge and not end up with a traffic charge and fines and fees and loss of license. And now you end up with more and more charges. And so around about 1999 is when I decided I'm going to go to college, and then I'm going to try to pursue law school after that. And I never saw myself running for public office, but I did see myself in the legal arena, helping folks out, making sure that I would be the voice for people who didn't feel like they had a voice, whether that was representing defendants or even representing victims or even representing plaintiffs or defendants in the criminal world. At that point, I knew I just wanted to help other people that did not know how to navigate the legal system or felt intimidated by the legal system. And so that's what I did. I went over to North Carolina A&T in 99, and then I went to UNC Chapel Hill for law school and started my legal career off as an assistant district attorney, because I interned at the district attorney's office my last year of law school, and I just fell in love with that work. And so that's where I started my career off. Then I went to the attorney general's office after about 5 years at the DA's office. And then I decided, and instead of doing all this traveling around North Carolina, I think I'm ready now to run for judge. I ran for judge in 2008, actually, in an open seat to get my feet wet in the political arena and, learn how to run for public office and what all that entailed. And the feedback I got was amazingly helpful, because what the folks said was, we think Lora one day will make a excellent judge because she has a great temperament, and, she has a great eye, and she has great skill set for it. But we think she needs just a little more, practice in the legal field. And so with that being said, I spent the next 8 years balancing out my experience in the criminal law arena and then over in the civil law arena by going to the Attorney General's office. And then I decided, okay, I think 8 years is good. So I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna run for judge in the town and county where I live. And I was successful at doing that. So I was a district court judge, and then I was appointed to the Superior Court bench in 2018. And then I defended that seat in the fall of 2018 against an opponent and was successful at keeping the seat. And that's where I currently serve.
For the average voter, voting for judges is sort of a confusing thing. They see all these judges listed on the ballot. Judges don't typically spend a lot of time or money advertising that they're running, not like, a lot of the other candidates do. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of confusing to them when they see all these names and they wonder, who should I vote for? So why should people be voting for you for judge for the North Carolina Court of Appeals in seat 5?
In order to understand why you should vote for me for the North Carolina Court of Appeals, you first need to know what the Court of Appeals does. And so the duties of a judge on the Court of Appeals is to sit in panels of 3 and review cases from the lower courts. And those cases are not reviewed based on the facts of the case. They're only reviewed based on, in layman's terms, what the judge did wrong in that case. So they're reviewed for errors of procedure or errors in application of law, or either they're reviewed from the Superior Court bench for constitutionality of an issue. 80% of the cases that go up to the Court of Appeals are criminal cases, and those cases are going to come from the Superior Court bench. Most of those cases are going to come from trials, and the other cases are going to come from plea appeals that came first to the Superior Court bench by way of district court, and then either the state or the defendant was not happy with the outcome in Superior Court, so they decided to appeal it even up to the Court of Appeals. Your civil court cases are also going to come primarily from the Superior Court bench, except for your family law issues, which are going to be divorce, custody, child support, equitable distribution. Those district court matters are going to go up to the Court of Appeals as well. Those are the only cases in the district court that will go straight from the district court, skip Superior Court, and go straight to the Court of Appeals. So the reason why you should vote for me for seat number 5 on the Court of Appeals is because you want an experienced judge. And while there's going to be a learning curve for any judge, even though they may be transitioning from one bench to another bench, there's still going to be a learning curve. But you absolutely, in my opinion, want a judge that understands what goes into these cases that they're going to be reviewing. And so it's quite different from a district court judge that sits as a trier of fact, because that means that they don't write jury instructions and they don't hear complex motions to suppress. They don't sit on civil cases where the litigation amount is $25,000 or more. Those are handled in Superior Court, and those are going up to the Court of Appeals. And so those types of cases, you want a judge that's been there, that's done that kind of understands the mechanisms of how this operates. And therefore, when they get up to the Court of Appeals, they already know that. And in fact, for seat number 5, I'm the only candidate that's even filed an appellate brief, in their legal career. And I practice appellate law at the Attorney General's office by arguing criminal and civil cases to the Court of Appeals. So you definitely want that experience as well, because you want someone that knows how the Court of Appeals operates, what to look for when a brief gets there, how a brief, the aspects of a brief, and what the attorney should be arguing in that brief. And most of the Court of Appeals cases that come up are argued by brief. You don't see the attorneys, you don't see the litigants, and then you very rarely see the attorneys, because out of 9 to 12 cases that the 3-judge panel will hear that week out of the month, only 1 to 3 of those cases will get picked for oral arguments. And then when the attorneys get up there to argue their case, each side has exactly 20 minutes to argue their position. And a lot of times that 20 minutes is not spent with the attorney arguing the argument that they've spent so long to prepare, because you've got the Court of Appeals judges that's shooting questions at them that they have to answer there. So when it comes to me, I've got that experience. I've got that Superior Court experience. I've got that District Court experience. Other cases that Superior Court judges handle are what we call 2.1 complex business cases. In order to preside over that case, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court has to specifically appoint you to that case, and only a Superior Court judge can get appointed. So I've handled those cases. Then you've got cases where Superior Court judges sit in a 3-judge panel to determine the constitutionality of something that the legislative branch has done that a citizen or organization has challenged. I've presided over that cases. In those cases, you also have to be appointed by the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, and only a Superior Court judge can preside over those cases. So when you're presiding over those cases, if they get appealed, they're going to the Court of Appeals. So if you need the experience of someone that has handled those cases and knows how the mechanisms of the ins and outs of those cases as well. So when you're talking about experience, I am the candidate that has the qualifications and the experience to transition from the Superior Court bench to which is the highest trial court in North Carolina, to the North Carolina Court of Appeals, which is what we call the Intermediate Appellate Court of North Carolina, or the second highest appellate court, of course, being with the Supreme Court being the highest appellate court in the state. I think diversity of experience, culture, background, and perspective matter. And though you don't want to vote for a candidate because they're African American or, whatever other race they might be, it is very important to bring different perspectives to the bench when you're reviewing cases. And when you're talking about life and liberty, you're talking about civilly, you're talking about lots and lots of money, you're talking about people's businesses, you're talking about their livelihoods. I will be the only African American woman on a bench of 15 judges. That's a very unique perspective that no one else will be able to bring. The cultural perspective, the background, the experience, all that weighs in when you're sitting there and you're trying to determine whether something should have happened at the lower court level or not happen. And even if it did happen, if there was an error that did happen, what does that mean? Because the ruling of the judges on the Court of Appeals, even if they say there was an error, it doesn't mean the whole case starts over automatically. It could mean that, or it could just mean that it gets sent back down for resentencing, or it gets sent back down for a judge to make findings on the record as to why they ruled the way they did, to make sure that the facts support the ruling, and of course to make sure that the law supports the facts. And so again, if you don't have that Superior Court experience as a trial judge or as a practicing lawyer, then it's going to be hard to do the very important work that the Court of Appeals has to do.
You are, of course, the Democratic candidate. Why is it important to elect Democrats to the North Carolina Court of Appeals?
Quite honestly, I don't think it's important to elect Democrats to the North Carolina Court of Appeals. And the reason why I say that is because I think the worst thing that could have happened to judges is that we were made to run in partisan races. I think that is the fallacy of the general population of voters, is that they judge us judicial candidates now based on whether we are registered Democrat or a registered Republican. If Dennis Elliott comes before Judge Lora Cubbage, it should not matter to him nor Judge Cubbage what my party affiliation is or what his party affiliation is. Dennis should know that he's coming before a judge whose rulings and decisions are based on the rule of law, the facts that are presented to her, and justice. And that is it. No other factor should come into play there. What I will say that there is a difference in ideologies, and that should make it important to the voter. Now, there seems to be in this polarized climate where people are really putting out there what their ideologies are. And my ideology as a candidate is that we need to move forward. When I tell you I will be the only African-American woman on the bench, I'm hoping that in the near future, that won't be the case, that I won't go down in history as being the only African-American woman on a bench of 15 people, because our state is not made up of all Caucasians, and it's not made up of just Caucasians and African Americans. So in order for everyone in our state to feel represented, we need to have every voice and every perspective heard, especially on matters where we're dealing with changing the lives of people. When we talk about what I believe and what my opponent believes based on what we're campaigning on, my opponent, who is an African American Republican, which is an anomaly here in North Carolina for statewide races. And North Carolina has never elected an African American Republican for a statewide race. But the difference in our ideologies is my opponent in the Republican slate is running on the framework that you should be an originalist when it comes to constitutional things. I don't agree or disagree, that's their thing, but what I will say, for me, I sit as an African American and I sit as a woman being able to run for the second highest court in the state and even be able to get into law school and sit on somebody's bench, because there have been folks from many years ago that challenged something that the legislative branch has done. And when I hear the ideology of my opponent, that makes me fearful that that slate wants judges to be rubber stamps of approval for whatever the legislative branch does. A judge cannot review anything that the legislative branch has done, but for the fact that some agency or citizen has challenged it. And once it's brought before a court, it is absolutely the mandate and what the voters put us in our seats for, to review what the legislative branch has done and decide whether it's constitutional or unconstitutional. And when you say, basically that you should just do whatever the legislative branch does because they're the lawmakers, yes, they are the lawmakers, judges are not. But every citizen and every agency or organization has the constitutional right to challenge what any branch of government does. And, it drives me insane sometimes just to hear it, because we don't want people thinking that you cannot challenge what the government does. You have a constitutional right to do that. And if we're going to be rubber stamps for the legislative branch, there's no place for that in the judicial branch. We are the checks and balances for the executive branch and the legislative branch. And we are sometimes the first firewall of protection and oftentimes the last firewall of protection to protect citizens against things that they feel like is not done right to them. So while it should not matter what the registered party affiliation is of the person that's running for a judicial seat, you definitely should get to know the candidates and get to know their ideologies. Because for me, I believe that we are, as a nation, and definitely in North Carolina, are at a juncture in history where this election means we're either going to move forward or we're going to move backwards. We're not going to be at a standstill after 2020 election. You are either going to be voting to move the state forward and move concepts and ideals forward so that we start embracing and including everyone, or you're either going to move backwards and we're going to end up going back in time with those theories and concepts of how things can be run. And I'm not sure what history class my opponent set in, but being both African Americans, we only sit in the judge's seat because of challenges to legislative mandates that were overturned by judges.
This is an 8-year term you're running for, correct?
Yes.
Got any aspirations after that? If you look, are you looking out ahead? I mean, you've held a lot of different offices, you know, moving up the ladder, so to speak. Do you have anything else out there that you're interested in?
I have whatever comes for me. Right now, Dennis, what I have is my vision and my eyes on the Court of Appeals. And once I get to the Court of Appeals, if something else should develop in that 8-year term, we'll have to figure it out then. But right now, my focus is the Court of Appeals and being able to make an impact there. All
right. It's been very interesting. I've enjoyed talking with you. Anything else you want to add about your candidacy or anything else?
I would just like people that would hear this to know that 2020 is a very important election. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you sit on. Every voter needs to vote. My particular race is a statewide race. And so I'm going to be on the ballot of every registered voter in the state of North Carolina. I would humbly and respectfully ask for the vote, but only after you have researched the candidates and feel like I am worthy to have your vote. I ask that you make sure that you get to the polls and or vote by mail, whatever you choose to do, and not just take yourself, but reach over and grab a neighbor or a friend or some family members and take them along with you. And I'll leave my website too, if that's okay.
Yes, go right ahead.
And my website to learn more about me is www.cubbageforjudge.com. And a lot of people like Cubbage. It's spelled like cabbage, but with a U. So that's www.cubbageforjudge.com.
All right, let me put that up on the screen for people to see then. Is that it?
There you go. Yep, that's it.
All right, very good.
Thank you so much for reaching out. I appreciate that.
Hey, I'm glad to do it, and good luck in your race, and good luck with everything else you're doing in the future. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, and looking forward to talking with you again.
All right. Thanks a lot. Judge Lora C. Cubbage, the Democratic candidate for the North Carolina Court of Appeals, Seat 5, our guest today on the Papa Dennis Show. Thanks for being